Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And unfortunately, Stevie is not joining me this week. He is, of course, in the path of Hurricane Milton. So we wish Stevie and everybody impacted by Hurricane Milton the best. But this week for Running Hot, we are talking bets for the Bank of America Roval 400 at Charlotte Motor Speedway here on Running Hot. Last weekend at Talladega, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who Stevie and I gave out here on the podcast at 40-1, took home the win, just barely beating out Brad Keselowski by less than 1/100th of a second. William Byron did come home, did end up racing his way in third, clinching a spot in the next round of the playoffs. Talladega was a very interesting race. We had moments of four-wide racing for 8 minutes long. We saw a crash at the end of a stage between Ross Chastain and Ryan Blaney, which took out Ryan Blaney, causing him to finish 39th, I believe it was. So a lot of interesting action. And, of course, there was the big one at the end of the race, a 28-car melee with cars strewn all over the grass at Talladega. A lot of interesting controversy on how that race got restarted, on which cars were able to get fired up by NASCAR in what order. So a lot of controversy there, but overall, I thought the racing was pretty good. I thought it got kind of intense at times, for sure, especially at the end of stages. I don't think it's, the type of racing, especially at super speedways, that we love in this next gen car. I think it is very difficult to make moves. You're kind of just stuck where you are. But for this kind of racing, I thought it was on the better end of the spectrum. And what it really does is it sets up an interesting playoff picture. Right now, as I mentioned, we only have William Byron locked into the next round. But Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson do look to be sitting pretty with large gaps over the bubble. Then at the bubble, we have Chase Elliott leading Joey Logano for the final playoff transfer spot. Chase Elliott 13 points ahead of Joey Logano. Behind Joey Logano on the outside looking in as well, Daniel Suarez another 7 points back. Austin Cindric 9 points further back than that. And Chase Briscoe another 3 points back there, putting him 32 points behind Chase Elliott for the final playoff spot. Right now, Chase Elliott is in that final playoff transfer spot. He's 1 point behind Tyler Reddick, who is also in at the moment. Ryan Blaney a further 11 points ahead. Alex Bowman 1 point ahead of Blaney. And Denny Hamlin 4 points ahead of Bowman. So everyone from Chase Elliott all the way through Denny Hamlin are in the playoffs right now, but very close in points. So that'll definitely have implications as we head to Charlotte this weekend. So speaking of Charlotte, we are headed there for the Bank of America Roval 400 on the Charlotte road course. They race partly on the oval, partly on the interior road course. Racing at the Roval is pretty interesting. It does race like a road course. We saw last year's winner, AJ Allmendinger, is a road course ace. We've seen a lot of road course experts perform very well there. And it does end up needing a little bit of a combination of driver and car, certainly because of the oval aspect of it, but also just it's a little bit faster of a a road course. So, in that case, you do need a little bit more of the mechanical, of the aero, of the driver, all of it put together. And that does tend to favor the bigger teams, but also the road course racers as well. So racing on the oval, it's always interesting because racing at the oval is heavily impacted by the playoff situation because it is often either a playoff cutoff race or the next last one. And the last few years, it has been the playoff cutoff race. So it becomes very important to know each driver's strategy. So let's talk strategy for each of the playoff drivers and how they may handle that here at the Roval. William Byron, he is in. He can race for the win. He can go on the optimal race winning strategy. He can pit before the end of the stages. And then when the stage comes, everybody else pits and cycles back to the back, and William Byron stays out front again. Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson are second and third in points. They're not locked in, but they're both very close to being locked in. I could see them trying to grab stage 1 points and locking themselves in and then being able to go for the race winning strategy from stage 2 and stage 3, meaning they could flip the stage in stage 2 to have track position for stage 3. Also, they could just go for the winning strategy right off the bat. So I do think Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson approach this race pretty normally. Try to get the race win, or maybe take stage 1 points. Just see what the race gives to you. If you're not in position for solid stage 1 points, flip the stage. If you are, great, take that and then flip stage 2. After that is where it gets very interesting. Denny Hamlin, Alex Bowman, Ryan Blaney, they're in this little mini tier where they're 11 points to 16 points ahead of Tyler Reddick. And Reddick and Chase Elliott are in their own mini tier. So Denny Hamlin, Alex Bowman, Ryan Blaney, they probably need to points race, especially in stage 1, potentially in stage 2, because what that does is it prevents them, by grabbing all these stage points, it prevents them from falling below Tyler Reddick, falling below Chase Elliott. And in that case, if we have one of Briscoe or Cindric or Suarez win their way into the next round, they're insulated by the fact that they'll still stay ahead of multiple drivers. So I think those 3 are points racing. Tyler Reddick and Chase Elliott have to points race, because even Joey Logano could get ahead of them on points. So Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott absolutely have to points race. They're the 2 in their own little mini tier, immediately ahead of the cutoff. And then below the cutoff, Joey Logano is kind of in his own tier here, where he could potentially points race his way in with a good day. And Joey Logano has been very good at the Roval, has the best average finish at the Roval among active drivers. So Logano could try to race his way in. He could go for the race winning strategy as well if he doesn't feel like he's going to be able to grab stage points in the correct way. Daniel Suarez, even more iffy on racing his way in. This is where you really lean towards he probably needs to win. And Austin Cindric and Chase Briscoe definitely need to win their way in. But what this does, by having Denny Hamlin, Alex Bowman, Ryan Blaney, but especially Tyler Reddick and Chase Elliott being the big ones, who take up a lot of win probability, now having to points race, removing themselves from the optimal win strategy scenario, that opens up so much extra win probability, right? If Tyler Reddick is normally, let's say, 11% to win this race, now maybe he's only 4 to 5% to win this race. Chase Elliott, if he's normally 7-8% to win this race, now maybe he's only 3 or 4% to win this race. That opens up nearly double-digit percent win probability to get dispersed among these other drivers. And then tack on the same for guys like Ryan Blaney, Alex Bowman, Denny Hamlin, who all are a little bit lower in win probability on road courses, but who have had some good performances here. Ryan Blaney has a win here. Alex Bowman has multiple top 10 finishes here, top 5s even. Denny Hamlin always strong. So this opens up scenarios where guys that can go for the race win get increased win probability even over what I model them at. So I think this is a very important topic, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on for this week's bets. So let's dive into those bets. As always, going to take you for a lap around the track. At the Charlotte Roval, we got more than 4 turns, but we'll focus on 4 of them. 1 pick from me for each of the 4 turns before I drive into victory lane. So gonna throw the green flag on the Bank of America Roval 400 at Charlotte Motor Speedway and dive into turn 1. All right, for my turn 1 pick, I am going straight to the top here. William Byron is locked into the next round. I'm going to take William Byron to win at 12-1. I love this pick. William Byron has always been strong at the Roval. And one thing I did not mention in the introduction is the fact that the Roval is configured a little bit differently this year. I don't think that matters too much. Guys that'll be good here are still going to be good here. William Byron has a 2nd place finish here just last year. 3 years ago, he led the most laps. 4 years ago, he led the most laps. 5 years ago, he finished 6th. Really only 1 blemish on his Roval history in terms of the last 5 years, and that was 2 years ago when he finished 16th, but still put in a strong performance, finishing 2nd in stage 1 there. So William Byron is going to have a strong car here. He is on the race winning strategy. That extra win probability that opens up from those guys like Chase Elliott and Tyler Reddick can get absorbed by William Byron. So I love William Byron at 12-1. I have him in terms of my model closer to 10% to win, but that's without factoring in. I don't have a way to model taking away win probability from Tyler Reddick and Chase Elliott because there isn't really a good way to do that on this like one-off scenario here that we encounter once a year. So more than 10% is what I have William Byron winning the Bank of America Roval 400 as my turn one pick here on Running Hot. All right, one turn down. We are going to take the back part of the track into turn two. Okay, turn two here on Running Hot. Just like William Byron, I'm going to go straight back to the top, and I am going to go with Christopher Bell to win. You can get him at 16-1. You can get him at 14-1. I'm fine with those. Even if you want to take him at 12-1, I am showing value on him there. With him being 57 points ahead of the cut line, again, it's almost impossible for him to not clinch his way in. He would need to finish basically dead last and have all the guys, on at least Joey Logano on the outside looking in, grab all the points and have a new winner. So it would take an absolutely catastrophic scenario for Christopher Bell to not find his way into the playoffs at the end of this. So Christopher Bell is one of the premier road course racers in the series. He already has several strong road course results this year. You remember he at Circuit of the Americas finished second, but he was probably on his way to win that if he wasn't held up by his teammate Ty Gibbs. Otherwise, I do think he would have won Circuit of the Americas over my other pick, William Byron here. At Sonoma, he finished ninth. At the Chicago Street Course, he was in contention for the win late there, along with Tyler Reddick, along with Ty Gibbs, those Toyotas that were trying to catch Alex Bowman, who has stayed out on the rain tires. And unfortunately, Christopher Bell ended up getting caught up in a wreck, not really of his own doing there, as those Toyotas were closing in on Alex Bowman. But Bell did have a strong car at the Chicago Street Course. Didn't fare as well at Watkins Glen, but I do think Christopher Bell, with the fact that he's going to be on the race winning strategy here, that extra win probability, I really like that. My model has Christopher Bell closer to 9%, but with Christopher Bell being 9% in my model, and again, getting some of the benefit from that win probability taken away from those points racing drivers, I do even like him as low as 12-1 if that is all you have. So Christopher Bell, 14-1, 16-1, 12-1 to win, whatever you got there, I'm fine with any of those prices. Certainly shop around and make sure you find the best price possible. But he is my turn to pick here on Running Hot. So that means we have two turns down here at the Charlotte Roval and two turns to go. So we're going to head down the back portion of the Charlotte Roval, which of course is on the oval section, and head to that chicane, which we'll call turn three. All right, turn three here on Running Hot. Instead of taking outrights here, I'm going to pivot to a couple of top five bets. For turn three, I am going to take Ty Gibbs, top five at plus 250. I see this as low as plus 200. There is a plus 225 out there. I see a plus 220. I'm fine with any of those prices for very similar reasons, of course, with the win probability opening up, but also just not just the win probability, but all those front positions are more likely to be filled by drivers going on the optimal strategy, which of course Ty Gibbs is one of those. Ty Gibbs was a playoff driver, but he got eliminated in the first round of the playoffs. And with that, it means all he wants to do now is get his first career win. So Ty Gibbs is going to be on the optimal race winning strategy. We have seen how good Ty Gibbs has been at road courses this year, finishing third at Circuit of the Americas after his teammate Christopher Bell did get by him. Had a DNF at Sonoma, which wasn't great. Ran really well at the Chicago Street Course, finishing third, ended up leading the most laps at the Chicago Street Course. So 2 podiums already this year for Ty Gibbs at road courses. Didn't have as great a race at Watkins Glen. Honestly, the Toyotas in general didn't look great because of the massive tire fall off there, but we're not going to really have that issue here at the Roval. So I think the Toyotas are going to be a lot more competitive here at the Roval. And Ty Gibbs, we know how good of a road course racer he is. I mean, if we look at him coming up through the Xfinity Series, he won at the Daytona road course. He won at Watkins Glen, right? He won at Road America. He won at the Indy road course. He's won at 4 different road courses in the Xfinity Series in his limited time in the series. It's only a matter of time before he gets one. I'm going to play it a little bit safer and take him for a top 5 finish, just because when you start betting multiple drivers to win, you start cannibalizing win probabilities. So I do want to open up a little bit of wiggle room here and take Ty Gibbs for a top 5 finish. I actually, this is interesting enough, have him modeled fair value at 2-1. So if you do have plus 250, plus 225, plus 220, you're getting model value. But I still like it at 2-1 because, again, of the factor that I can't really account for in my model of opening up added top 5 probability, thanks to the drivers that will likely be points racing. So Ty Gibbs for a top 5 finish at plus 250 is my turn 3 pick. So I have 1 turn left, and that's turn 4. All right, turn 4 here on Running Hot for the Charlotte Roval Bank of America Roval 400. I am going to go with another top 5 bet, as I mentioned to, and this is a driver I've come around to over the course of the week, and that's Kyle Busch for a top 5 finish at plus 325. Interestingly enough, my model has fair value on this at plus 275. So I figured, look, my model's showing value on it. I wasn't as high on Kyle Busch personally. I'm going to trust the model here and take Kyle Busch plus 325 when my model's showing plus 275. And then again, similarly to Ty Gibbs, Kyle Busch is not a playoff driver, so you can focus on the race winning strategy. The reason I wasn't so high on Kyle Busch was I wasn't quite sold on him on road courses this year. And to be fair, he hasn't been very good on road courses this year compared to where he has been, but he hasn't been terrible. I probably undersold him a little bit earlier this week. If we look prior to Watkins Glen at the other 3 road course races, Kyle Busch had a 95.2 driver rating at COTA. He had a 99.2 driver rating at Sonoma. He had an 89.5 driver rating at the Chicago Street Course, so averages all those together, and he has been just shy of a driver rating of 95 altogether. That's good enough. When you have a driver rating of 95, that is good enough to finish inside the top 5, better than the plus 325 value we're getting just based off the long-term model, statistical trends of drivers that achieve a driver rating of 95. So at road courses. So I do like Kyle Busch to have a top 5 finish at 3.25 or better, even plus 275. And then if we look at Kyle Busch's longer history prior to this year, I mean, he crushed it for Richard Childress Racing last year at road courses. His average driver rating was 91, but there was kind of a clunker in there at the Indy GP, which wasn't really of his doing. So if we take that out, it was closer to a 98 driver rating, including races of 101, 112, and 118 driver ratings for Kyle Busch. So he has the upside here if they can recapture that 2023 form. And even if they don't, just his average 2024 form has been good enough to, allow him to be a top 5 contender, I would say. Certainly, plus 325 isn't a favored for a top 5 finish, but a guy who I do think could contend for a top 5 finish, especially knowing he is going to be on the optimal strategy. So Kyle Busch for a top 5 finish plus 325 is my final turn pick here on Running Hot. So there's only one thing left to do, and of course, that is to drive into victory lane. So my victory lane pick for the Bank of America Roval 400, I am going to go with Michael McDowell at 22-1 to win this race. Michael McDowell already, has proven how good he is at road courses everywhere. Michael McDowell seems to get it done at these road courses week in, week out, and, has one of his last few chances to win a race with his Front Row Motorsports team and capture his only race win of the year. Michael McDowell did win the Indy Roval last year. And so now we're at the Charlotte Roval. A little bit different because the oval part of it is more banked. But Michael McDowell has performed well at road courses this year, finished second at Sonoma, finished fifth at the Chicago Street Course after having early terrible tire strategy, absolutely terrible. It set him a lap down. That's how bad his tire strategy was. He came back to finish fifth. He had a DNF at Coda, but then he finished seventh at Watkins Glen. So without a DNF, he's finished in the top 7 every single road course race so far this year. A winner on a Roval last year at Indy. The Charlotte Roval has not been as kind to him, so I understand that, but we get the added benefit of the fact that we have these drivers that'll be points racing, and Michael McDowell has been so good at all the other road courses. So this probably isn't, of all the turns here, maybe my favorite, but I think it's probably undervalued because of his track history. I think just overall, we want to pull in more road course form than just the Charlotte Roval. And I think if we do that, I can get there certainly on Michael McDowell at 22-1. So Michael McDowell, 22-1 to win. Very small bet here on him is my victory lane pick on this episode of Running Hot. So that'll do it for us. Thank you for listening to the Bank of America Roval 400 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. We'll be back this time next week to talk bets for the South Point 400 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. On behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young, who we are all wishing the best through Hurricane Milton, thanks again for listening, and we see you back here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.